Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the show, do me one quick favor and leave us that rating and review. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to Taryn Byron. Taryn Bryon is the president and broker of CJ Dalton, a leading real estate firm which focuses on new developments in multifamily residential leasing. Ms. Bryon is the lead real estate consultant for DMG Investments, and with over 17 years of hands-on experience in real estate sales and mentorship, she plays an integral part in the ongoing development of the firm. Let's welcome to the show, Ms. Taryn Byron.
Hi, how's it going, John?
I am great. Taryn, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take a minute or two and give us a little bit more context?
Well, I am a real estate broker owner for CJ Dalton. I'm the president of the firm, and we handle new development in the condominium marketplace and residential rental marketplace, as well as fully occupied buildings handling residential leasing. So we do anything from a 10-unit multifamily building up to a portfolio of 2,000 units, and handle every aspect in between marketing, sales, leasing.
All right. So that's a lot that you cover. And geographically, are you all over, or where do you focus?
So we're in New York City and New Jersey.
Okay, New York and New Jersey. So, as of the time we're recording this, there is a lot of hoopla, maybe a little bit of over-exaggeration about this mass exodus from New York and kind of the New York area. What are you seeing right now?
Well, New York City is still very much alive and well. Everyone, I feel like everything's sensationalized by social media and the media in general. So we get to see a little too much information, but then only what we're kind of directed to look at. Look here, but don't look over there. So New York is definitely alive and well. There's been some shakeup in the market. I think we were due for all of that, quite frankly. But the nice thing, too, is that some areas of New Jersey, especially the suburban markets, are seeing an influx of residential leasing and sales and new development, and the product that's being developed in those more suburban areas is more urban style development. So we're seeing more multifamily development with retail components to it. So it's very exciting to see all the changes in the development that's happening in these areas specifically.
And as you do a lot of consulting work for these developers too, right? So as you're looking at things real time, how are you able to kind of convey some of this information? And does that change a developer's business plan, or maybe the unit mix of properties they're looking to develop? Or what kind of time frame do they need to actually make adjustments based on such a big change that we've had?
So it's pretty incredible to see that the things that we're doing today, any developer that's going to acquire land today is not going to get through that process for probably about 6 months to a year. So anything that is slated for development now was acquired last year. So a lot of developers put together plans that now have to change based on what consumers are looking for these days. We're seeing a lot more shifts in, people not wanting to have roommates anymore. Also, outdoor space is a big thing. Having a place where you can work, because a lot of people are working from home now. Some of the amenities programming has to change for some of these developers too, because they were looking at more collaborative, collective amenity spaces like living lobbies where you'd have a coffee shop in the lobby. With social distancing, that's something that is now coming into question. So the timeline for new development is definitely long and drawn out. So anything that's happening today, we're not going to see the effects of these, COVID-related changes for another about 24 to 36 months, depending on what the developer's timeline is like. So anything that's in the design phases now is what's being changed. Any product that's being delivered, that's about 3 or 4 years old sometimes. So it's new development. They're trying to act quick and think, how can we take what we were designing for the market 3 years ago and apply it to today?
Yeah, it's tough to, go from, the plans you had and just that process, right? To get everything approved, get the, shovel to the ground, start building it out. And, suddenly you have this pretty significant event that shifts maybe perspectives and behaviors. And now you're trying to do whatever you can without making mass changes, because obviously that lead time is just so significant. So to your point, I mean, as far as new developments that actually take into consideration the impact of COVID, we probably won't see those designs come out for a few more years. In regards to, what's going on in the New York area right now, how much of this is driven by affordability, roommate situation, as you mentioned before? What are some of the specific factors that are shifting that dynamic where we are seeing some people, not a mass exodus, but some people deciding to leave Manhattan and maybe some of the urban core to sprawl out to other parts of the city?
Age is definitely something I think we're seeing a lot more of our millennial tenants and buyers deciding to go move back with their parents. It's definitely that, I would say, kind of post-grad first job where they would move in with a roommate and live in a roommate type situation. Those are the people who are really moving out of the city because their parents live in the suburbs to Manhattan in New Jersey and still have that 5,000 square foot, 4-bed, 3-bath house where, they can go and hang out and not have to pay rent because now they don't have to commute to the city because they're able to work from home. And then, you're also seeing a lot of young couples leave the city because one of them had to give up a job because they're homeschooling their children now. And, wife or husband need to work from the city now only 2 days a week. So it's not as big of a demand for them to be in the office. But, with everything, the shift back to a new normal is going to happen at some point. The question's going to be when.
Yeah. So, and then as, an agent and your business, you oversee both the rental side of things as well as helping from developers and all that. As you're looking and working with some of these clients who are now looking to pivot and shift, what are some of the things that folks are looking for? Those people who are still looking to lease right now, what are they looking for?
Outdoor space. Everyone wants outdoor space. And the other thing that people are really looking for right now is a place to have some sort of home office, whether it's just a larger living area or being able to tuck, a desk into a little alcove in, at the top of a flight of stairs or something. Home office space, separate and apart, especially for couples, trying to be on a Zoom call when you have two people in a 500 square foot studio is not really the easiest thing.
Yeah, I think we all learned that lesson the hard way, right? For anyone who was used to working from home by yourself and you're just like, oh, this other person's here now and kids are here too. It's like, oh, it's really difficult to be effective and have these professional calls while you can hear everyone else's calls. So, no, it's really important. You said the home office space is really important right now, and outdoor space. Those are two amenities that renters are certainly looking for today. And presumably this is something that those developers who are looking, 3-4 years from now, as we look at new product, we would expect to see an increase in home office spaces and little alcoves within a unit, as well as, more outdoor space as well. So really good intel there. As you look at overall trends in the market, and we talked about New Jersey, New York, the East Coast, for years, at least what I've seen from a national standpoint, is that there seems to have been, people really looking to move further south. In the Southeast region, seeing some good growth. And maybe they were leaving the New York area, the Northeast region a little bit more. What are you seeing boots on the ground? I mean, are you seeing a similar pattern as far as the growth, or are you seeing that a different group of people who are looking to move to New York and move to the New Jersey area?
There's always transitions between areas there. I find that, and we're speaking in generalities here, that typically it is the older population that tends to move down south. They retire. They want to go and enjoy all the sunny weather and fabulous beaches that the South has to offer. I mean, I don't blame them, especially, they don't have to go to work anymore. It's a much slower pace of life. And, even how you were mentioning before, your transition from the Chicago area to a little bit slower pace is something that, happens. People just want to be able to take a breath and relax sometimes. It's like permanent vacation.
Exactly right. People are definitely looking for that. And the warm weather is something that we always see, especially if anyone leaving the north, right? Leaving New York, Chicago, Cleveland, Minneapolis. A lot of times they're citing the weather in these winters. They can be hard. And I'll be curious to see what this winter does, right? For the time if you
please.
Yeah, I mean, we're all crossing our fingers, but can you imagine, being essentially in, I don't want to say house arrest, but, we're all quarantined during winter. You're only going to get like 6 or 8 hours of sunshine as it is. And to be quarantined during it is probably not going to be fun versus, again, our friends a little further west in the South where they have some sunshine and they can sit outside and do some more things. So be really curious to see if that can even have an impact on people's behavior as well going forward. I want to shift a little bit because you work with a pretty wide range of investors. And we talked a little bit more about developers and, what they're looking at on the long tail side of things. I want to talk about some of those smaller apartment investors, right? So you mentioned like the lower end, maybe a 10-unit building. A lot of times with these investors, especially those who are starting out or really in the early stages of building out their portfolio, it's not quite clear what value the different team members bring. I think we think of real estate agents, real estate brokers as people who help us find deals, maybe a leasing agent that helps us lease up a property, but there's certainly more than just bringing a deal to the table or helping me sell an asset. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about the role of real estate agent could and should have, at least when you're looking for one. We all know they help to sell properties, but when you're looking for a real estate agent on your team, what kind of characteristics and qualities should we be looking for?
Well, I would have to say that as an investor who's looking to rent apartments, your real estate partner does play a significant role in your overall investment. So this is an extremely critical choice because that person is not only marketing an apartment for rent. It's very easy to just throw a sign on something that says for rent and put a phone number on it. But as a broker, it's our job to work as they call it a fiduciary. We have a fiduciary relationship to you. And part of what we're supposed to be doing is vetting the tenant and really going and digging into their financial history and background and understanding, the financial wherewithal of this tenant. It's very easy for people to fib on applications and stretch the truth and create a false image of what they are. I'm sure you are very familiar with Instagram filters. But, some people are really good at putting Instagram filters on their rental applications. So what our job is to kind of find out what the true picture of someone's financial situation is. And especially given this climate where there's eviction moratoriums and things like that, you don't want to get a tenant in there who has no intention to pay and maybe on thin ice with their job and then can't pay, because then you're stuck with someone and not collecting any income. And we know that on a smaller unit count, that has a much, much bigger impact than on something where you have one tenant in 100-unit building that's not paying.
Yeah, those are great insights right there. And first of all, I love what you said about the IG filters. And I'm going to tell my property management team that we're no longer declining applications. We're just going to tell them you use too many IG filters. You use too many filters on your resume. We cleaned it up. no, it no longer
Mhm.
comes across. That's a great one right there. And you mentioned the eviction moratorium. I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, that's certainly having a drag on a lot of people right now. And there's certain markets and certain cities where maybe it's having a little bit of a bigger impact. And maybe not to the extent that people are thinking, but what are you seeing right now in your markets? How is that eviction moratorium holding up, and what kind of impact has it had on your owners and the properties that you manage for them?
So knockwood, the owners that I work with, they've been very, very lucky in this situation and not had to have those types of situations and scenarios because we do our best to vet the tenants prior to. But, there's a multitude of reasons why someone might not be able to pay their rent. And it's very sad that these things are happening in general, that people are losing their jobs. They're not able to afford their rent. It's very nerve wracking on the part of a tenant. I'm sure that people actually enjoy having a home to live in and don't want to not pay rent. But from a landlord perspective on things, I think that these eviction moratoriums and these rent stops and allowing people to stay in apartments can really have a significant impact on the small landlord, because that small landlord still is going to have to pay a mortgage. And it's not like a large institutional lending situation where you have kind of a fund behind a large building. You're talking about maybe someone who they invested their life savings into a 10-unit building, and that income provides them with the ability to pay their own mortgage. And they've kind of gotten into investments as their mode of employment. Now they're in a situation where they have half the building not paying rent, and they're not being able to pay their own mortgage. So it's just a vicious cycle. And I think that we really need to focus on small landlords and how those people are going to be affected, because it's going to be a ripple effect that comes out of this.
Yeah, I mean, those people are absolutely facing some tough times right now. And I think as, investors, we should be mindful of that. And certainly there may be some opportunities to help solve some of those problems down the road. But I think as of right now, obviously anything that we can do to help, would make the life a little bit easier. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people just assume landlords are these super rich, greedy individuals. And the reality is a lot of people are just like you described. Mom and pop took some investments, maybe saved some money, and instead of just keeping it in a savings account, they put it into a property that they can manage. And ideally, I know a lot of them, the ones I speak to, they do so with the vision of passing it along to their kids and maybe the grandkids, and helping those individuals get a kind of a head start in life. So right now it's a little bit tough, and hopefully, folks can manage and get through it, and get the relief that they're looking for, and things kind of get better. You said something a little bit earlier that I want to come back to. You were talking about, the fiduciary responsibility when it comes to vetting a tenant. We've talked about the IG filter, but you mentioned someone may be on thin ice with their job. Can you talk a little bit about maybe that process to go through, vet a tenant? What are you all looking for? And how do you determine whether or not this resident is going to be able to pay rent? Not just the first couple of months, which I think most people are great for a couple of months, but 6 months, 9 months, a year. How do you go through that process?
So we look at a lot of different factors when we're putting together our applications. We ask people what their employment history is like, not just where they work and what their position is, but also how long have they been there. If someone's just starting at a job, it's probably likely that if there's going to be a fallout, they cut the fresh meat first, not the people who have been there for quite some time. You can also tell the more entry level jobs too; those tend to be a little bit more risky. But it's not to say that those prospective tenants are inappropriate or bad. You then look at other factors in someone's employment, and you can then see, do they have enough money saved or in savings that if they were to lose their job, are they living paycheck to paycheck right now? All of these things are questions that we as agents kind of have to roll up our sleeves and dig into to really understand, especially in these times, what their ability to pay their rent is going to be.
And do you have different criteria based on the asset class? For instance, if you have a luxury apartment building in downtown Manhattan versus, maybe more of a classy, rougher area, do you differentiate the criteria there?
So it's all going to be based off of landlord requirements. Some landlords do require that you provide bank statements, or if you're self-employed, your tax returns. I don't really care. It's not a big deal. I still feel that it's our job as brokers to really dive into that and see, because we're representing that this person is okay to move in. And the first person that the landlord's going to turn around and say is, well, you told me they were fine. So there's no specific criteria for a certain asset class. Some landlords won't entertain anyone who has a credit score below a certain number, anyone who has a bankruptcy or delinquent payments. There's different requirements that each landlord has. So it's our job too, as brokers, to really get that information from the landlord and take the time to review that, and bring things like a bankruptcy or delinquent payment to their attention when we do see those things come up.
What's a question about kind of that tenant screening process that landlords don't ask you, but you wish they did ask you?
Oh, that's a really great question. One of those things is, who else is going to be living in this apartment with them? And are they also applicants for this unit? You have a lot of times roommate situations, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend that live in an apartment together. And maybe one of them says, I don't want to be on the lease. In New Jersey and in New York, I refuse to have situations like that. Anyone who's over the age of 18 is required to go through a credit and background check and be put on the lease, just to cover myself. But, when you accept a check from a tenant that's not really a tenant or named on the lease, you open yourself up to a lot of issues as a landlord.
Yeah, that's a good tip right there. And I mean, a lot of renters are very savvy as well. I mean, one thing that we always look out for is, someone applying by themselves, but they show up with a significant other and they say, oh, no, it's just for me. How do you deal with that situation where you have a strong inkling that it's going to be this other person staying there too, but they're telling you it's just going to be for themselves?
Well, there's different situations all the time. And what I would advise a landlord to put in their lease is what they consider a guest and what they consider beyond being a guest, because the landlord can actually require that if someone's spending a significant amount of time there or receiving mail at an apartment, whether it's like, a PSE&G bill or utility bill, or even their Amazon packages addressed to them, you can still open yourself up to liability. So I think it's important for landlords to define in their leases what is a guest and what is not a guest. Because then on our side as an agent, when we are in those situations, we can then communicate that to the tenant that this is a requirement that the landlord does have.
That's great. I mean, put in writing, cover yourself is what I'm hearing, right? So that's what the lease is for. Make sure that you are covering yourself and having those discussions and setting yourself up where you can trust but verify, and you protect yourself in case it's clear that they either misled you or their situation changed down the road. So, and again, check your local, jurisdictions when it comes to the laws and ramifications, because you could be liable for a situation and, maybe didn't even have a clue what was going on. So you just certainly want to make sure you have a strong lease that protects you in regards to who is actually living at the property. You also talked about just the process and some of the business plans that people have, when it comes to value add business plans, especially in a market like New York, where someone gets a great apartment, maybe they stay there for 5, 7, 10 years before they decide to move out. What are some of the value add strategies that people are looking to employ to turn over these units, extract a little bit more value, and continue to grow?
So again, as a broker, we see a wide variety of different, I'm going to call it product out there as apartments. So we kind of get to see what's renting quickly and add that value to our landlords by explaining to them different things that are on trend or we're finding that are working well within the marketplace, like home office space or outdoor space, if you have those options. All of those things are going to be things that we as brokers should communicate to a landlord. It's not just slapping something up on the internet and kicking back and relaxing and waiting. If you're really working, especially with a strong brokerage partner that has a process to renting apartments, then they're going to advise you of just maybe you should change the countertops out because nobody really likes laminate anymore. Or, that green refrigerator that's in your kitchen, we should probably update that to a stainless steel model. And just all those little tips and tricks. What's kind of the tenants are looking for, and those things sometimes can be very minimal as just changing a paint color.
Yeah, there's always opportunities there. So just staying close with what renters are looking for today and upgrading anything that's dated, bringing those apartments up to speed where they're now more modern, and you can attract a quality resident. Do you all do anything in regards to, you know, like right now, there is a lot of movement. Some folks are staying still. Some folks are refinancing properties. Some folks are downsizing, as we talked about, going back home. What are you looking to do as far as retention strategies to try to either retain current residents so they're not leaving, you don't have a lot of turnover, or to attract, new residents, maybe through concessions or other offerings? What's your retention plan there?
So for new residents, and this is something that's always like a catch-22, tenants are savvy. They know what's going on. They can tell when you're trying to pull something over on them. So as the landlord too, you can't offer 6 months of free rent and double what you were going to charge for rent because they're going to catch on here at some point. And then the retention strategy is nothing after that because their lease amount on, let's say you were going to charge $2,000 for an apartment and you're now charging them $4,000, they're not going to renew on a $4,000 a month lease because they could really only afford $2,000. So then you become stuck in this cycle of needing to offer those incentives. So my advice is always to provide tenants with realistic incentives to get them in. There's even just certain qualifications for credit. There's lower security deposits if they have stellar credit or stellar, renting history. Those little things are things that tenants really perk up to. We do a lot of 1 month free on a 13-month lease, and even just being able to provide someone with a $500 Visa gift card towards their moving expenses sometimes is enough to get people in there. So I think a lot of the incentives are market-based. You need to maintain competitiveness within your market. Another thing that I've noticed is tenants want to have the landlords pay the fee now. And if it's applicable in your market, then it's something that you have to project into your overall pro forma for the building.
When you say the fee, you're talking about the application fee or what fee?
The broker fee.
The broker fee. Oh, yes.
Yeah, the broker fee.
Yeah, that's that New York thing, right? Yes. And New York is one of those cities where I think it's really common or pretty much standard for, the broker fee to be paid either by the resident, and now it sounds like by the owner. Chicago's another market where a lot of people will use a listing service or go directly to the broker. And then I think in a lot of other markets, the investors, we just typically hire a leasing agent and we will pay the agents directly. So it sounds like now that it's getting more competitive, the renters are saying, you pay for this. That way you really stand out and I don't have to cover this cost.
And that's, in those types of markets where traditionally the tenant would pay the fee, that's where what we're seeing when there's a large amount of inventory. That's the first thing that typically does change, that the fee is then covered by the landlord.
No, that's great points there. I want to recap a little bit of what you said. First and foremost, making sure that whatever concession or retention strategy you're using is still focused on actually being able to retain that tenant. If you jack up rents twice as much to offer 6 months free, they're never going to be able to pay that new rental amount that you gave them. So making sure that the actual rent amount is something that you could re-up them with, as opposed to something that was so astronomical that they're going to be forced to leave after a year anyway. The second thing you talked about was making sure that those real incentives, they added some real value. So whether that's less than a security deposit, giving 1 month free rent or the 13-month rent, make sure that it works for both parties. So you're getting something that works well for your business, and they're getting something that either lowers their cost or their out-of-pocket expenses. It makes it a little bit easier to do business. So great ways to think about how to drive that retention for those current residents, as well as any kind of concession plan if you're trying to attract new residents to the property. The last thing you mentioned was that $500 gift card, which I think is really interesting because I've seen people do like free TVs and all sorts of other specials before. And I've always been against like really doing something like that. It just screams desperation to me to give someone money or to give them a free TV or something like that to move in. Maybe that's just me, but I mean, what do you feel about some of those incentives where it's almost like you're paying someone versus just discounting your service?
Some landlords might not be able to offer a free month. It's some landlords, they run a tight rent amount, and, for rent control laws and things like that, they really just can't afford to offer a tenant a free month. So not every situation, and, I said it before, we're talking generalities in a lot of this, but not every landlord is that going to work for. So maybe they can offer to pay a broker fee. Maybe they can't offer 1 month free on a 13-month lease, but as an alternative, maybe what they can do is offer a tenant a gift card as opposed to those other incentives. And maybe their brother is a mover or something. You can get really creative. I always try to avoid the free TV thing because most people have their own TVs these days. And the gift card's just the easiest way because you can spend it really on whatever you want.
Yeah,
I'd go for shoes.
I was going to say, like shoes. I know new gaming systems are coming out, so I'm sure there's a lot of options there to keep it creative. All right, let's move on to our Bullseye Round. You ready?
Sure.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Oh boy, there's a lot of them. I feel like I had a situation where I went after a listing one time early in my career and completely bombed and felt horrible. So I called them to apologize and ended up being a very long time client that they appreciated my honesty. And we're like, listen, no one's ever been that honest with us. And, maybe this was the situation that arose from this, but we'll talk to you because we want to work with someone who's honest as opposed to just a salesperson. And it showed your character.
Awesome. All right. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I love to use Google Drive because I can really write contracts and do pretty much anything. And the other one is the Dropbox app that is also really great because you can scan things and find them right all in the app.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Stress Testing Your Retirement Savings by Keith Gebbert.
All right. That's the first time we've heard that one. We'll check that out. Stress Testing Your Retirement Savings. All right. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I wake up at 5:30 in the morning, every morning without fail. even on the weekends. But
You set your alarm clock or no?
I do, but I usually wake up now right before the alarm. It's very strange. My internal clock is going to get all messed up when we have daylight savings.
All right. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
That you need to focus on your goals and not pay attention to what other people are doing or their opinion of your goals.
Love it. Great tips there. Taryn, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
The best way for people to reach out to me is via email at Taryn, Taryn Byron, Byron, at cjdaltongroup.com, or on my cell at 732-362-1523, because I am attached to my phone at all times.
There you go. As you held it up, I saw a couple missed messages there, so I'm sure you'll jump back on there.
Oh, yeah.
But Taryn, listen, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for sharing your perspective of everything that's going on right now, the way the New York, New Jersey area has been impacted through all the changes, what developers are looking for, the lead time to react, and then really talking to us about, how we can do, work a better relationship with our partners, our agents as investors, understanding that due diligence process, the screening process for tenant verification, and all the things we can do to make sure we are putting quality residents in our apartments to ultimately drive revenue, drive great results, and boost up the value of these properties. For anyone who's listening, she just gave her email address, so please be sure to reach out to her. Taryn, I want to thank you again for coming on Target Market Insights, the Multifamily Marketing Show. We hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.